And hello everyone, Carlos here for another What's Up in Archaeology. Uh, how's the sound coming out, guys? I've got since last week I have this new desktop microphone. It's not too expensive, and I want to see if the levels are okay. What do you say? Oh, thank you. Hello, Warped. Hello, BJ Price. Hello, Archaeonomy. Hello, guys. Malachite, Chantel. Thank you for coming along. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of, it's not in my area of total expertise, but it is one of the subjects which I absolutely adore, and that is the Aegean civilizations. Most of you, I'm sure, have read Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, etc. And they uh, they are some of the early Bronze Age or Bronze Age, late Bronze Age Europe, especially the Aegean area, which includes Anatolia, which is now Turkey. Then south you have the Egyptian Empire. The Hittites is in the what Anatolia is now. So you have in this time frame we're going to talk about. We have four great civilizations all packed around the East Mediterranean Sea. We have the the Mycenaeans. We have the Minoans from Crete. The Mycenaeans, everyone knows, is in Greece. And we have the Hittites in what is now Turkey, well, they use Anatolia. Um, we have there further south the Egyptian Empire or Egyptian Kingdom, and I think it was Babylon. No, it wasn't Babylon. Syria maybe, but for this is not irrelevant. This is just a bit of a background. What is more interesting is um, what I'm talking about today is that scientists, no science, the Max Planck Institute, along with some Greek archaeologists, have finally mapped the genome of the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. Everyone knows Agamemnon, correct? I think I should assume that. If everyone has read Homer, the Iliad, the Trojan War, have Agamemnon, you have Paris of Troy, Helen of Troy, etc. And you have in the the Cretan island, Crete, the island of Crete, you have the Minoan civilization, the Minotaur, and the what's that? That that maze. He knows what you know what I'm talking about. The maze where the Minotaur is held in the center. But they finally got the DNA analysis of those, the origins of these two uh, e, um, uh, Aegean civilizations or Eastern Mediterranean civilizations. Now, a bit of a background. Uh, the Iliad and Homer was one of the first archaeological books that were not was one of the first myths books that were archaeologists tried to find evidence for. And now, in the late mid 1800s, 19th century, a German businessman by the name of Heinrich Schliemann became quite wealthy, but he loved archaeology and loved Homer so much that he set about trying to excavate some of the sites. He managed to get permission to after various um, trials and errors. He found that he was instructed to by other historians and people who studied actual the Greek mythologies and etc. That he was digging the wrong place. But he was an advocate for the historical places mentioned in the works of Homer, and so he began to excavate in a little Anatolian at the time named, now it's Western Turkey, near the Bosphorus, or near the where that divides Europe from Asia, a little town called Hisarlik. After he was excavating enough, he excavated that mound, and apparently there is much evidence that this is possibly the location of Troy. If I remember correctly, I think it was layer 12 or 10. I'm not sure. It's one of the lower levels. Out of memory, I can't remember them, but it's one of the semi-layers, in between layers, close to the bottom, close to the actual bedrock, where they found evidence that it could have been conflict have occurred there, so it could have been possibly the Troy, due to the dates that they managed to extract from the archaeological data that they extracted. Schliemann didn't just stop there. Well, while he was while he was digging in Hisarlik, he found some treasure. He found some gold necklace or something, and it's quite known. He was married to a Greek citizen who was considerably younger than he was, but at the time it was normal. So he took a photograph of his young wife with the necklace and treasures and that he found. The Ottoman Empire did not like that, and so they threatened him with imprisonment and all that shit. So he smuggled out his finds with the excuse that they would have been pilfered by the corrupt local officials. And apparently there's still a dispute between Turkey and I think Germany or Greece. I don't know where the actual those actual artifacts are being held. I think it's in Greece, but I don't quote me. I might be wrong. Now he also then went on to dig at Mycenae, and Mycenae was the headquarters. Well, no, was the capital city of the Mycenaean kingdom. We know Mycenae from Agamemnon, again from Homer, and he also while he was digging some of the shaft tombs, he discovered a burial mask made of gold, and he named it the Mask of Agamemnon. It could have been the date sort of corresponds to the probable period that supposedly Agamemnon lived, or theoretically, hypothetically lived, not theoretically, hypothetically lived. Am I still going okay? The sound's still quite clear, just so I don't want to be talking to myself and making a fool of myself and you guys not hearing me and so on, because I can't put on my Twitter at the moment. I'm looking at the articles at the moment. So type 1 if I'm coming clear, loud and clear. that always works. Now, after him, another archaeologist, this time an Englishman, his name was Arthur Evans. He began digging in Crete. Thank you, Venjing. I can't pronounce your name. The French Celt king. There you go. He began excavating after they weren't contemporaries. Arthur Evans began excavating after Schliemann had died. Schliemann wanted to excavate the Temple of Knossos in Crete, the one with the labyrinth. Oh, that's it, the labyrinth where the Minotaur was held in. He wanted to excavate it, but he died before he could realized his plan. So, but Arthur Evans was influenced by Schliemann, and he also began. Then he bought the site of Knossos, and he began excavating it. And he also restored part of the temple, which is still there. It's a bit controversial, his recreation. That's all I have to say. I'm not an expert. I don't know how well he kept the possible original schematics, etc., of the temple, but I won't get into that. What I'm trying to get at, just building up a little bit of a background into this period. We have around the 12th, 13th, 2000, early middle Bronze. Around 2000 BC, more or less, the island of Crete was ruled by a civilization called the Minoans, after King Minos. We get his name, King Minos, from Homer, basically. So it's they were named the Minoan civilization. They developed they were advanced. They sort of magically appeared in that island, and then they influenced other civilizations around the island. One of them was, of course, Mycenae, the Greek city-state, city powerhouse of the time. And they had contact with the Egyptians, and they had contact with the Hittites in Turkey, what is now Turkey, and other civilizations in that sphere. These civilizations had writing, etc. They were basically semi-documented. You can say that they was quite well documented by Homer. Now, let's get back into our times. We have finally managed to build up the genome of these peoples, and thus bringing us to this article. This is an article I have linked in the description. The Nature, from the site Nature, the publishing paper of Archaeology, Nature. It's in the link, which is the actual study. This is from Sci.org, the one of the better, which I like, one of the better analysis of the data. I also have in the description, so please read the articles I've put in the description. They are interesting. They sort of repeat each other, but more importantly, I could have done the Max Planck analysis. They were the ones that carried out the actual building of the genome. But I think this one is more reader friendly. Since they were the ones that carried out. Sorry about that. Now, I can see that my sound's coming quite okay. And now, the article should be. Why isn't it not sharing? Sorry about that, people. It was a little bit of a mistake. Now, it should be better. Yes. Now, so let's see if we can get it to appear on screen. It shows from the Sci.org. I love this site. I've said it before. It's quite good. So we're going to read from it. We're going to analyze it, and we're going to speak. Ancient DNA analysis reveal the Minoan and Mycenaean origins. Here we have a Minoan from Crete, literate Bronze Age civilization that flourished thousands of years ago. One woman shows dancing in a fresco that dates from 16,000 to 1450 BCE, before the current era. So it's close to 2,600 years old. This actual at 2,000 years to BCE, and that's more or less where you get the dating. Now, the analysis of ancient DNA has revealed that ancient Minoans and Mycenaeans were genetically similar, with both people descendant from early Neolithic farmers. Now, they likely migrated from Anatolia to Greece and Crete thousands of years prior to the Bronze Age. Modern Greeks, in turn, are largely descendant from the Mycenaeans. I didn't really want to. This is a bit of a spoiler alert, as I wanted to, but I'll talk about it at the end. I've talked about how agriculture, in other streams, how agriculture developed in what it's known as the Fertile Crescent that goes from Anatolian Taurus Mountains, the Greek, the Turkish Taurus Mountains. They go down to the Eastern Mediterranean, what is now Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and then curves back from Jordan to the Mesopotamian area of Iraq, more or less. So that's where these peoples came from these early Neolithic period. They came from Anatolia to Greece, and they found that because, we'll continue reading, the discovery that the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations on the island and Crete and on mainland Greece in the late 1800s gave birth to modern archaeology, and opened up direct, like I said, the late 1800s. Heinrich Schliemann and Arthur Evans were primarily the impulses of these discoveries. That's why I sort of got into the background of what I'm going to speak of now. So Heinrich Schliemann and Arthur Evans found these two civilizations from these excavations, and now they gave birth to modern archaeology because they were pioneers. They developed most of the skills. They weren't professional archaeologists like I am, or archaeonomy. They were basically Arthur Evans a bit more. He was a historian, etc. But Heinrich Schliemann was just a businessman who had a lot of money, and that's how archaeology started. This period of history was previously only being glimpsed at only through Homer's epic, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Minoan civilization flourished on Crete, beginning the 3rd millennium before the Common Era. That's 2000 BC, more or less. That's 3,000 years ago. And they were astonishingly advanced artistically and technologically. The Minoans were also the first literate people of Europe. Now, this statement, I'll highlight it. They were the first literate people of Europe. It's not conceptual Europe. It's not the concept of Europe. The concept of the European continent is very, very recent. I don't know when, but I suspect it is a medieval concept. They were physically the first literate people of Europe. They were people who lived in what we now call the European continent that were literate, the first one. So let's sort of put that into perspective. They didn't know they were Europeans. They knew they were Minoans. They knew that they were their culture. That's how they identified themselves. So it's not like they knew of a Europe, or no, it's not. This is nothing to do with the continent per se of Europe. It is, they were located in what is now we call the European continent. The Mycenaean civilization developed in mainland Greece in the 2nd millennium before the Common Era. So 1,000 years later, the Mycenaean civilization flourished. It shared many cultural features with the Minoans, and they used the Linear B script, an early form of Greek. Now, the Mycenaeans, they developed a script, a writing that has been labeled by Heinrich Schliemann as Linear A. We have not yet been able to decipher that language. We don't know how they spoke, what they spoke. We only know that they had an alphabet. And that alphabet was used by the Mycenaeans to develop their Greek language, or early Greek language, and was written. That's why when Linear B was deciphered, it was found to be more or less early Greek. But they used the alphabet, the letters or the symbols, or the script of Linear A. We've been linguists, etc., have been trying to continually trying to decipher Linear A. Once that is done, it'll be huge news, and I will be waiting with bated breath for that. Now, the origins of the Minoan and Mycenaean peoples, however, have puzzled archaeologists for over 100 years. It is widely believed that they derived from a different ancestral populations. So they think that they came from the Minoans and the Mycenaeans weren't closely related. That's what we thought. Excuse me, having a drink because a bit parched. The beer I'm drinking today is a Franciscano Weiss beer, just a normal one. I have another one slightly different from this one. So, cheers to everyone. Now, where was I? It was widely believed that they derived from different ancestral populations, but a new analysis of the well-preserved Minoan and Mycenaean DNA now provides many answers and insights. An international team of researchers from the University of Washington, the Harvard Medical School, and Max Planck Institute of Science and Human History. I love this. I love the Max Planck Institute. I'm not a geneticist by any stretch of the imagination, but the way they write their news releases on findings like these, they're accessible. I have linked in the description to their release, to their article on this, and it is awesome. Excuse me. Together with archaeologists and other collaborators from Greece and Turkey, reported that the first genome-wide DNA sequence data of Bronze Age inhabitants of mainland Greece, Crete, and southwestern Anatolia, southwestern Turkey. So, and lovely Minoan. Minoans were famed for, this is the Great Palace of Knossos. They were famous for bullfighters. That's the bullfighting thing. They jumped over the bulls. He's dark, by the way. Has anyone noticed? I've noticed this when I was studying archaeology. I took was part of a semester on European Bronze Age, etc. It dealt with the Eastern Mediterranean, of course, Bronze Age of the Minoans, the Mycenaeans, the Hittites, the Assyrians, and the Egyptians. And I loved it, even though it's a lot of history. I'm not saying history is better. I prefer prehistory, as everyone knows. And what always fascinated me is that some of the figures were not white. I'm not going to speculate on that. Could have been artistic. No, I won't even touch it because it's awesome. These frescoes. That's all I can say. John DeBim, yes, technically leaping in this sense is fighting, because you can see the front guy. He's holding onto the bull's horns. Yes, technically, it's not like modern Spanish and Portuguese bullfighting, which still happens on Portuguese television, by the way. But the Portuguese bullfighting is sort of more humane. They don't kill the bull in the ring. They just stick fucking barbs in his back to sever the shoulder muscle, so he will be really tired and shit. So I hate that, and I hate bullfighting, even the quote unquote humane bullfighting in Portugal. But I digress. Now, the University of Washington medical researcher George Stamatoyanopoulos, got that one right, a professor of genome science and medicine at the University of Washington School of Medicine. That's a mouthful, more mouthful than his name. Stamatoyanopoulos. Jeez, my Greek friends would fucking kill me if I couldn't pronounce a Greek name. He's a senior author of the paper describing the new findings. The paper appears in August the 2nd in an advanced online, the journal Nature. I have it linked in the description, but it's behind a paywall, and I don't like paywalls. So guys, read the Max Planck. It's there. So yeah. Researchers analyzed tooth DNA from the remains of 19 ancient individuals who could be definitely identified by archaeological evidence as Minoans of Crete and Mycenaeans of mainland Greece and the peoples who lived in southwestern Anatolia. So they found from the sites that they dated to the period of about 3,000, between 3,000 and 2,000 years ago, BC. Sorry, 2,000. Yeah, 2,000. With a period that Minoans in 3,000 and 2,000 before the Common Era. Yeah. And they were precisely dated using the best radiometric and most they could use easily calibrated carbon-14 dating, which is the most accurate for these recent period datings. And they found that they were within the time frame, so then they could extract the DNA material from the samples, which is in this area of the world, it is very, very hard due to the preservation techniques that didn't work. The actual environment, etc. I've talked about how a fossil becomes a fossil, etc. Or in this case, not a fossil because it takes longer to become a fossil, but at least how the material is preserved so you can identify it, etc. And in this area of the world, it is very, very difficult. Stamatoyanopoulos began collaborating with Johannes Krauss at the Max Planck Institute, who undertook the comprehensive genomic DNA sequencing using techniques developed in his laboratory, and P. David Reich from the Harvard Medical School, who worked with Yosif Lazaridis on the collation and statistical genetical analysis of the data. They compared Minoan Mycenaean genomes with each other and to more than 350 other ancient genomes and over 2,600 genomes of present-day humans from around the world. Here's some Linear B script. It's from the Mycenaeans, a Bronze Age script. That's Linear B, that is Greek. It could be, say, Tikanis Kala, Pusileni, Vlaka, Pupas, etc. I know a few words in Greek, so that's not what that tablet is saying, of course. And I'm purposely ignoring the chat at the moment because it's totally, it is fucking funny, guys. By the way, keep it up, please. I'm having a ball, but I'm purposely ignoring because I find him irrelevant. So anyway, let's get back to the important things in life, and for that I'm gonna have a drink. Cheers to Devon blocking people. It's no different from Steve Shives, but he doesn't see the irony. Now, the study shows that the Minoans and the Mycenaeans were genetically very similar. I'm not surprised. but not identical. Of course not. No two populations, if they are slightly isolated from each other, will be identical. They will be similar. That's normal. I am similar to Portuguese in my area of, it's not a state, it's a sort of a small artificial division of Portugal called Minho, M-I-N-H-O. It's above, there's a river, but I think it's the Ave River that divides Minho from the southern parts, and so on, from other parts of Portugal. Just a political division. It is artificial, but I am not identical. I am similar to peoples that live 70 kilometers from where I live, and that's not far. But because where I was born, where I grew up, and where I was born, not where I grew up, where I was born, my family history, we were isolated for hundreds of years. So my genetics will be slightly different from those people. Shit, even 25 kilometers, 30 kilometers away, I will be different from them. Not identical. I will be similar. So that's not surprising. The Minoans and Mycenaeans descended mainly from early Neolithic farmers, likely migrating thousands of years earlier in the Bronze Age from Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, the Fertile Crescent. And possibly then there was also waves that came all the way to what is now Europe. So, yeah. The Minoans and Mycenaeans and modern Greeks also have some ancestry related to the ancient peoples of the Caucasus, Armenia, and Iran. Yes. These findings suggest that some migrations occurred into the Aegean and southwestern Anatolia from further east after the time of the earliest farmers. I've talked about this before, I think. So, it's in my videos. While both Minoans and Mycenaeans had both first farmers and eastern genetic origins, because they distinguished them. The first farmers were one genetic group. You have then the Easterns, which came from Iran, Armenia, the Caucasus, and you also have the DNA genomes of the hunter-gatherers, which I still honestly don't know how they could be different. I would always assume that they would be, especially from the Fertile Crescent, they would be more homogeneous than they appear to be. But I don't know. I'm not a geneticist, so it's not up to me. The findings suggest that some of the migrations occurred in the Aegean and southwestern Anatolia from further east after the time of the early farmer settlers Lazaridis. While both the Minoans and the Mycenaeans had both first farmer and eastern genetic origins, Mycenaeans traced an additional minor component from an ancestry of ancient inhabitants of Eastern Europe and Northern Eurasia. This type of so-called ancient North Eurasian ancestry is one of the three ancestral populations of present-day Europeans and is also found in modern Greeks. So, yes. A passion for history inspired Stamatoyiannopoulos to initiate the project for over 100 years. Many mostly contested theories have circulated concerning the origins of the inhabitants of the Bronze Age, classical and modern Greeks, including the so-called coming of the Greeks in the late 2nd millennium, the Black Athena hypothesis of the Afro-Asiatic origin of classical Greek civilizations. I don't know what the fuck that's about. And the notorious theory of the 19th century German historian Follmeier, who popularized the belief that the descendants of ancient Greeks had vanished in early medieval times. So we have some more or less good hypothesis, some pseudoscience, and some bullshit. That's all I can identify. While the new study does not resolve all of the outstanding questions, of course not, they will be soon. or soon or not, they will be resolved in time. It provides key answers. Importantly, the findings disprove a widely held theory that the Mycenaeans were a foreign population in the Aegean, and were not related to the Minoans. Most likely due to them actually speaking Greek. I'm not saying, I don't know if we don't know if the Minoans spoke what we could call Greek, or what would be the language of the Hittites, which is not, because they have deciphered the Hittite language. But they could have spoken Hittite, for example, or similar to the Hittite, something between Hittite, Syrian or Babylonian. I can't remember the actual civilization that was contemporary from the Mesopotamian area, and Egyptian. They could have coming from where they came, most possibly they would have had influences of what would be Greek. I'm sure that's that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. That's what I just said now. The no. Let's get back to the article, because I am totally going off course, and that's not what I should do. The results also dispel that modern Greeks did not descend from the Mycenaeans and later Greek populations. So that is good. So modern Greeks did descend from other ancient Greek populations. In broad strokes, the new study shows that there were genetically continuity in the Aegean from the time of the first farmers to present-day Greece, but not in isolation. The peoples of the Greek mainland had some admixture with ancient North Eurasians. That would be Siberia, Caucasus, around that area, and peoples from Eastern European steppe, both before and after the time of the Minoan Mycenaeans, which may provide the missing link between Greek speakers and their linguistic relatives elsewhere in Europe and Asia. When I did the subject of this period, the Bronze Age, the late Bronze Age of the Aegean area, Eastern Aegean, there's a known factor that the Dorian invasion, quote unquote, and the Dorian invasion, quote unquote, were peoples that are known to have come from what they said, the northern Eastern European, north of Greece, basically. They reinforced the Greek language, or it evolved into what would become the modern Greek language. And they brought some architectural features, because after the Bronze Age collapse, that area was in great chaos. The Sea Peoples arose, which would later seem to have become the Phoenicians, according to genetic evidence that I think I spoke about it last week or some time ago, or not, but that's this period of time was the end of the Bronze Age was a traumatic event. And what this study shows is basically that the Greeks have been a very, very, very homogeneous people. Don't forget, they were invaded by Rome. They were invaded by Persia before that. Later, Rome. They were invaded by the Ottomans. They had countless other invasions into their land. They lived under the Ottomans for a hell of a long time, for about 400 years at least. And yet they still maintain their genetic makeup quite linear, quite homogeneous. So that's what we get from this study. that the Greeks have connections with their ancient ancestors from the time of the earliest farmers, and which is excellent. Sort of a little bit, not as much as what well, much more homogeneous than what I myself have. I have Roman, I have Celtic Roman and Germanic admixture in me, but I still have some Neanderthal. I've said this enough, so that's about it for the article and for the talk. Went for 40 minutes. I almost shitted myself before talking about. I apologize for that period of where I shouldn't have speculated on what other people know. Um, I think we can end it here, unless anyone in the chat wants to ask a question. And I don't give a shit about Devon Tracy. I don't follow him. I don't care about him. He's blocked me. I don't care about him. I don't block him, but I have him muted. And fuck him. And he's a moron. That's cool, David, the Carlos David, mate. If you got the God gene, awesome. It's called the Neanderthal the gene, man. When did I stay? Ah, yes, Archaeology. Yes, they extracted both the the normal nuclear DNA and also the mitochondrial DNA. They did. They did that to get as close as the Max Planck. Don't just do one type of it. They do the whole. I've shown it before in my other articles on Neanderthals, Denisovians, modern humans, etc., and they do both the mitochondrial and the nuclear DNA to see. But yes, of course, mitochondrial DNA, if anyone doesn't know, is only passed on by the mother. That's where you can use that analysis of DNA to bring back all DNA of modern humans to the quote-unquote Eve, which has now been pushed back to 340,000 years. There you go. While the nuclear DNA, which can also has the Y chromosome, etc., that is a bit, of course, yes, it is. It's harder to get the Y chromosomes and genome archaeology. Absolutely, it is, but it's not impossible. And yes, so yes, yeah. It's also Carlos David. Yes, genomes is also beyond me. Yeah, it is, but you have the chrome. You can extract, if it's a male, you can extract the Y chromosome from that nuclear DNA. While then, specifically, if it's if you just find specifically the mitochondrial DNA is just pure female. Yes, obviously, you can't get the Y chromosome from a female sample, even with a nuclear DNA sample. Geez, I used sample too much. Sorry about that. I need another drink. Damn, I drank too little today. What? You worked in a lab with a DNA researcher. She was finding this amazing stuff. I was like, this is an Enfield bullet. What? So she tried to extract DNA from an Enfield bullet. Awesome. Awesome. If it was the bullet, and it's not impossible, you know. If the bullet was used to kill someone, And the bullet, of course, was then laid into the ground or hollowed him out, went through him, the person, and it would have had samples on the bullet. And then, if with an slightly exceptional preservation techniques, you could extract DNA from an Enfield bullet. Just saying. High-tech stuff, yeah. So I agree. Lee Enfields are great rifles. My cousin in Australia, he has a couple of. My cousin and his sons, they have guns. Of course, you can have guns in Australia. I don't. I can't have guns in Portugal. Too much shit. Even though I do have some guns, but that's another. That's not important. They have the what's it called, the Mauser 98s. So, but I asked him if he wanted to buy the Lee Enfield, and he said, "Yeah." He likes the 98 and also the Mosin the Mosin German, the Russian single Russian rifle. The Epic of Gilgamesh. That's where the biblical Genesis came from, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, nice, Ark. Anyway, so should I wrap this up, people? Sort of ended. Yes, flood narrative is in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Yes, as is sort of the snake, and which is the devil, and so on, everlasting life. Yes, it's there. Yep. So, okay, people, I'm gonna end it here. It was interesting. I don't give a shit about the Devon Tracy. Nothing. I don't even want. I can't stand his voice. It's too high pitched for a man. Yes, oh, I'm being sexist. No, come on. I'm politically incorrect most of the time. I can do that. Like no one can touch me here in Portugal. Uh, so even the what is it? The that British police county, that the ones that they're looking after. They're gonna come after you. Berkshire? No, not Berkshire. No, Berkshire. Someone help me, guys. Anyway, never mind. Good night, my dear friends and people, and see you next week.